Thank you so much, Colin, for your presentation and for outlining how it works, the different pathways for students, whether they're coming from secondary school, state college, or community college, or university. Thank you for that. I want to get straight to the big elephant in the room. So let's get straight to the tough question first, then we'll get easier. Now, I know everyone knows that medical school is not cheap. There is no ands, ifs, or buts. It is an investment, a major investment. And so, for persons that really want to consider different options, let's address how some students afford your institution. So, I know thank you, Jennifer, for giving us that total cost, because that helps to put things in perspective. But are they payment plans for persons by the semester? Do you expect the semester paid in full? How does it work across your different institutions?
Sure. Thank you for that question. Tuition is billed per semester. So about 2 weeks before the beginning of each semester, the student can go right to their student portal. And so they will see the tuition and fees, as well as any deduction of scholarships done per semester. And if you think about it, each semester is about 4 months in duration. So the families have that entire semester to pay off that semester before the student progresses to the next semester.
Okay,
Mhm.
so that means that they can pay part of that semester bill within the 4 months, but they must be completed by the end of the semester.
That's correct.
Mhm. And it's the same principle, Sheena, in that you need to clear your last term bill before moving on to the previous term. But this is in terms of our operations. One of the things that we do is that we have a financial aid counselor that is assigned to the family. We have a conversation about financing one's education before you even start. I mentioned in the presentation the confidential financial statement, which is a form that we provide to the family. And it says basically you write down, it's like going to the bank for a loan where you have to put on your statement of affairs. And it's same in principle. Write down what the earnings was like, what savings were like, what loans that you have for other reasons, etc. And how much monies do you anticipate having per year to fund that student's education. So it allows the family to think in real terms the amount of money they need to come up with in order to fund. So that conversation starts early. We certainly don't want one to be coming, let's say one year into their medical education, and then there's a challenge for funding. That's just not fair to the family, not fair to the students. So the financial aid counselors will work from the get-go with these students to make sure that there is a 4-year plan, 5-year plan, 6-year plan, depending on where they're coming in. And the university, through scholarships and bursaries, and that advising along with payment plans. So one of the things that is quite common, and we see it in some places in the region, is access to foreign exchange. So we work with families, recognizing that if you are from country X, and I can call Trinidad out, if you are from Trinidad, there is an issue with access to foreign exchange. And by virtue of that, we recognize this and we will work with the family in having a different payment regime in order for them to fund their education.
All right. Now I have what might be considered an awkward question. So hear me out first. So we know in the Caribbean that a lot of students, if they're interested in medicine, one of their more logical options may be the University of the West Indies, which is a good option for many. But if we had to stack you guys at the side, what are some of the advantages that your institutions offer in comparison? Not saying that one is better than the other, but obviously each of you have your uniqueness about you. So from hearing you, I could point out the type of students that would suit each of your institutions. But what are some of the advantages in terms of, I know when you finish your MBBS, you can become and you get your license general practitioner, which is fine. But what are some of the other layers that you guys add? Because I know you mentioned there are different types of specialties you can get into. What are some of the advantages you will say if someone is considering this coming from the region?
Mm-hmm. Um,
Sure, I'll quickly add one thing and maybe we can go back and forth. AUC and Ross, we have incredibly small class sizes, right? Remember, we enroll 3 times a year, every January, May, and September. We do that purposely so that we can have smaller class sizes so that the students can have all the attention that they need, not only to help with them academically, but as they progress, to give counseling and helping them choose their hospitals for their clinical clerkships, so that they can be thinking about their network and getting their letters of recommendation when it comes time for the next piece, which is the entering into the U.S. residency match program. So having different touch points along the way, different resources available with those individual students so that we can support them throughout their journey and even after they graduate with their MD degree into residency and beyond.
Mhm. I think, you know, Sheena, it is important that students explore, and that's fine. And then when we're speaking of graduate education or professional education, it is about fit. Which institution is the best fit for you? That's important. So, you know, we can speak about, and I will speak about St. George's University. If you ask me what are the things that would stand out in my mind, I would say our student support services, bar none. Our Department of Educational Services is the largest department on campus. Instinctively, you may say anatomy, physiology, or one of those. No, it is the Department of Educational Services with a number of the learning strategies, etc. And their focus is to help students to become better students, discovering what their learning style is, facilitating review groups. There are literally 300 plus review groups on campus each week, right? Supporting students in that way. We don't assume that a student, professor, because they hold a PhD, they can teach. So there are teaching sessions for lecturers as well. Let's Talk teaching on Fridays, teaching with technology Tuesdays, helping them to enhance their ability to deliver in terms of pedagogy, etc. So the support services, academic support services through the Department of Educational Services, the social and well-being services through the Psychological Services Center, because one doesn't have to be crazy to go to the Psychological Services Center, but one needs to recognize that coping with challenges is important, and your ability to respond when challenges occur is important. And that stigma that is typically attached to seeking help, which is quite common in the Caribbean, and anybody who grows up in a British model of education, we know this. You're expected to do it alone. You go inside and you read your book and it's all about you. No, not at SGU. Medicine is a team sport. We teach you to play as a team. We teach you how to collaborate. We teach you to rely on each other. We also teach you to seek help, because the end goal is becoming that practicing physician. So that is how, if I'm thinking of distinctions, I would say the student support services, the holistic student support services to get student to the point of becoming that practicing physician is the key point. And then other support services as well. You know, Jennifer mentioned the career choices. So the Office of Career Guidance would assist in which residencies to apply for and where, based on your current academic trajectory, etc. So that type of support is there from day one as the student comes in through graduation and beyond.
All right. Well, thanks for that. And that's important. So I want you to walk me through. Say I'm a student. I'm in secondary school. I'm taking my CAPE exam, so that's sixth form. I want to be an anesthesiologist. Now, if I start locally, I might have to get my MBBS, and then I go into general practice. I might get an opportunity to work alongside an anesthesiologist if I get a placement at the hospital or something. But suppose I don't want that route, because then I still have to go and specialize to become that again. I still have to do another set of studying. Now, if I am coming to you,
But I'll deliberately interrupt you here, because once one is choosing medicine, you are committed to be a lifelong learner. So if you don't intend studying for long, wrong profession. Let's be clear on that, right? Because I just want to be honest with our listeners here. But essentially what it would be, Sheena, is that you will go through let's say 6-4. So you're looking at a 5-year program to graduate as a physician.
right?
Following our model, you start off 1 year of preclinical coursework. Then you go into the 4-year MD program. You do 2 years of basic sciences, lots of classroom, a little bit of hospital. And then you do your 2 years of clinical clerkships. The penultimate year would be the core rotations: medicine, surgery, peds, OBGYN, psychiatry. You're doing your core rotations there. And in your final year, you have a sub-internship that is mandatory. And then you have electives, where you get to do more of the courses based on the area you believe you would like to specialize in, or areas that you believe you may like to specialize in. You may start off saying anesthesiology, And by the time you get up there, you choose something else. But the North American model of education is different from the British model of education that we see here. Now, when you graduate with that MBBS in the region, you go into an internship program. You may then work for a while as a house officer and then go off to specialize.
Right.
North American model, upon graduation, you apply to your specialty program called a residency program. But that first year is still an internship or foundation year. So you don't escape the foundation year or the internship year in the North American model. It's just that you already placed in your track towards your residency or your specialization. So British model, graduate, internship, then look for a specialization. North American model, apply to the specialization, referred to as residency. First year is still an internship year.
Okay, so the same thing, but just one might come before the other.
Yes, basically that is it. When you graduate, you're still a young doc. You really don't know much, I'm sorry to say. So you still have to be under the supervision of others.
Right. Okay. So, what immigration wise, that's an important part because I'm going to come to whichever country I'm in first. So if I'm coming, say, from Jamaica, walk me through the immigration of that. So from coming to if I'm Jamaican and I'm coming to your institution, what do I need immigration wise for whichever country your school is in? So whether it's St. Martin, Barbados, or Grenada, and then how do I legally get into the US for the 2 years of that 4-year part, MD part?
Mhm.
Yeah, I can go. So St. Martin would be and Barbados would be easy for the students to access. If students are thinking about our UK track, those are actually UKVI visas. So those are just dependent on the various passports. So again, we'd work with students individually to look. So in what I'm referring to are the first 2 years of medical sciences. When students come to the US, everyone who's non-American that's coming to the US for the clinical training are on B1, which are actually business visas. And AUC and Ross boast a 100% acceptance rate with our B1 visas. So again, long history of us doing that to get students into our hospital sites. We provide training on how to speak to the immigration officers. So depending on your passport, some students will actually go right into the US and talk to the immigration officer there at the border. Others will have to apply ahead of time, depending on passport. But again, something we've been doing for years. So we have specialists available to work with the students individually to help guide them through that process.
Mhm.
And
Yes, so
sorry. Of course, Barbados will have do they require student visas for Barbados when they're coming?
It depends on the passport that you hold, but usually they would just get the visa when they enter into Barbados.
Thank you.
And same principle applies. 150 countries represented among our student population from inception. So we see all types of passports. As an accepted student of St. George's University, though, you can enter Grenada with that acceptance letter. If you hold a passport that requires a visa, that visa can be issued upon arrival. So there are no issues. You don't have to go searching for a Grenada embassy someplace in order to come in. CARICOM nationals, of course, is easy. So we have visa-free travel. And just as Jennifer mentioned, going off to the US, B1, B2 visa. So it's just as your same visa that you used to go to Disney World. It's just that the purpose of your entering the US will be different, and you'll be provided with supportive documents in order to do that. We do have a consulate officer that will guide as well, but the supportive documents will provide the information necessary for entry. And likewise with the UK, then you apply for a student visa in going to the UK because you'll be spending an extended period of time if you're doing your 2 years of clinical clerkships there. So student visa for the UK.
So the next question I have is the clinical clerkship. So what happens after that 4-year MD period? So what's the next step for persons after that?
No, let's be clear. At the end of the 4-year MD, you are a doctor. So if you're in the US, you're going into a residency program. If you're in the UK or the Caribbean, you're going into an internship program and then moving towards full licensure. right? So that at the end of the 4 years, you're a doctor. You're starting to earn money, a little bit at first, starting to earn money, but then you move into the internship, residency / specialization, depending on where you are.
On where you are. Okay. Do you
Can-
find, oh, sorry, Jennifer, go
Oh,
ahead.
can I just add, and Colin did mention this, I think sometimes the piece that gets confusing is, the first 2 years of medical sciences, lectures and labs, and the second 2 years of the clerkships, that's when you're figuring out sort of what kind of doctor you want to be. And Colin, I love the way you described that. The second 2 years, mostly hospital with a little bit of the bookwork. So that's the time, right? So if you're really thinking about being an anesthesiologist, you're going to be doing, right, in year 4, you're going to be trying to do some clerkships in anesthesiology to see if that's something you want to do. And that's sort of like when you're actually, figuring it out. So when you do graduate with your MD and you're applying for residency in the US, right, where we, right, specialize immediately, you will be applying for that specialty that you are interested in. So that's sort of like the pathway of how you figure out what kind of physician you want to be. You've got 2 years to try all these different things. I laugh because when I interview students, I always ask them if they have an idea of what kind of doctor they might want to be. And they either have something set in their mind or they don't know, right? They want to wait and sort of figure it out. And I've always wanted to do a follow-up to see how many of them actually changed their perspective once they were in their clinical clerkships.
And so many of them change their perspectives. And it's a combination of things, really. I like use just local parlance here now. Is what you like may not like you. So you may figure that, you want to get into something, but it's not your best forte. That's one. Or you just discover something else that you are better at. The other thing is one of quality of life. So, and sometimes the competitiveness may be. So someone may say anesthesiology, and that will be competitive. One may say, the other areas that are highly competitive because it allows you quality of life from the perspective of I get to determine my work hours. If you're into emergency medicine, you don't get to determine what time you go to bed, right? So, those decisions are also lifestyle decisions that these practicing physicians will make in order to determine what specialty they'll want to go into.
So it's not just as, I know that you always have ideas of grandeur before you start anything, and everything looks fuzzy and rosy when you have your rose-colored glasses on. So it's best that persons might have an idea, but also as they go through the program, they would recognize what suits them, what may not suit them. Okay, so I have a question for Jennifer, specifically because you mentioned a track for persons with an MBBS already, and I wanted to find out, meaning if they have an MBBS with licensure in the country that they're in, or just a pure MBBS and they haven't done their internship year.
As long as they have earned the MBBS degree, once they've completed it, right, then they can apply to us. It might help explain, we launched this program through realizing that there was a need for students who were looking for access to the US for residency, basically. Students wanted us to provide additional training for the USMLE exams, United States Medical Licensure Assessments, as well as access to our hospital networks. And those are things that we provide only to our students. So we developed the MBBS program as that option, right? Come into semester 5. If you haven't already passed USMLE Step 1, we provide training for that, have full access to our hospital networks, right? So they can start building their network, seeing the different specialties in the US, and then our expertise with helping students match into residency. That was the main benefit of our MBBS to MD pathway. But they do have, since we're graduate entry, they do have to either have already completed a bachelor's degree, which most won't, right, if they went into MBBS right after high school, or they would have to have completed their MBBS actual degree before they can start with us.
Just out of interest, we do have, and it's not an academic program for somebody who holds an MBBS, but we've had students who come to us mainly from the continent of Africa who hold MBBS degrees, and they come into us as clinical tutors. So they come into us on a 3-year contract to work with us, so they earn. They teach as tutors within the undergraduate, the basic sciences component, by getting familiarized or refamiliarized with the basic sciences and the US model of taking exams, setting exams, they are preparing themselves to take step one. The clinical training they have done back. So the step two is typically easier for them. So we have had MBBS holders, physicians, who came in, worked with us for 3 years, did step one as a result of that teaching as clinical tutors within our program, did step one, did step two, and go off and successfully land residencies. They're not graduates of St. George's University, but they assisted certainly in mentoring our students while they themselves prepared for the USMLE steps.
Okay, and that's interesting to know. Not necessarily that is actually a pathway for persons to look at, right?
Well, you know, it's they're landing a job, right? Okay. So they're earning while they study to prepare to move on. You know, so it just depends on how quickly they want to get into that that residency program. So that's again a matter of choice, and it depends on circumstances.
All right. Okay. And the next question I have then is, before we start to wrap up, is for Jennifer again. With the scholarships you mentioned, there are quite some sizable scholarships there. Are you saying that you said no application, so those are automatic when you apply once you are considered to be an accepted student?
That's correct. Yeah, once you're accepted into the program, and we've confirmed that you are non-American, those scholarships are automatically awarded. We used to have students write essays, and we'd spend a lot of time reading them and deciding who was going to get the scholarships. We thought, let's just make that easy. So yes, if you are non-American, you apply and are accepted, the scholarship is automatically awarded. Of course, that money it comes off, those scholarship dollars come off the tuition that is due to us. So it's added to the student portal, and each semester you'll see a portion of that larger scholarship off the tuition due to us.
Right. And Colin, I know you have that attractive looking offer for CARICOM Nationals specifically. That's only for CARICOM Nationals, yeah?
The 65% off is the preclinical portion of the education. So when it was like 40,000, so those who are coming in, let's say from CSEC for the first 3 years, 65% off of the 40,000. Coming in from CAPE for that first year, 65% off of the 40,000. When promoted into the 4-year program, I'm rounding up deliberately now because the cost of everything goes up. So it's 90,000 per year multiplied by 4. The ticket price is 360,000. But through the International Peace Bursary, which is geared towards people from developing countries, based on the confidential financial statement that you would have submitted, we can do up to 50% off of that published tuition. So the numbers come back to being similar. I mean, you know, people come home with 100, 120,000, 125,000 by way of scholarships based on need. But it will be based on need in those circumstances because these are institutional scholarships. And of course, I did mention accessibility to the limited number of institutional loans. I don't want people to plan for an institutional loan. That's not where I'm going at all. But I'm saying is that if one, you know, if a couple of things. One is that, you know, you've been performing well. You do have a gap in terms of a funding gap. The institutional loans are there. But again, just to speak to Caribbean students, a hurricane comes. So you had best laid plans. And a hurricane comes, disrupts your family's income source. Institutional loans to assist. COVID hit. Institutional loans have been there to assist. Clico Bico, which you know very well, Sheena. Institutional loans there to assist. So you know, it is there as a support service. It's not something that we expect students to plan from day one on. But if you are in train and there are financial challenges, it is something that the institution would look to assist with, because our goal is the same as yours, practicing physician.
Right. And so there you have it, folks. I just have one additional question. So when I accept my offer from either SGU, Ross, or AUC, tell me what are my next steps? So is there a tuition deposit to pay? How about the housing process? What does all of that look like for a student?
Mm-hmm. All right. What we didn't actually address living expenses. So yes, there is a deposit. It's $500. So it's nothing big. And then so $500 demonstrates your commitment to come to us, right? 500 US, that is. And then there will be a payment regime, a payment schedule that you will be given So that deposit is counted against your tuition. So that's a discount on your tuition. And then there will be an installment plan coming up to your first semester as to how you would pay your tuition. You're guaranteed on-campus housing for your first year if you're coming into the 4-year program. If you're coming into a preclinical 5-year program, you're guaranteed on-campus housing for the first 2 years. If you're under 18, you are going to be on campus until your age of adulthood, right? You have no choice in that, unless you have good, strong family in Grenada. But overall, when we say living expenses, and I think this is important to cater to as well, as a preclinical student coming from CSEC, coming from CAPE, living expenses totals about $14,000 per year US. When you are in the 4-year MD program, it gets a little bit more expensive, of course, when you're stateside, have to rent an apartment in New York, for example. It gets up to be about 18,000, between 18 and 20,000 US per year. But these are all encompassing numbers now. Housing, food, books, entertainment, traveling home, on vacations, etc. That's the number that you look for outside of tuition for your living expenses.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Colin.
In AUC and Ross, very similar. Our enrollment deposit is $1,000 US though. So it's a little bit more. And then our tuition begins right before first semester. But as you asked, once the enrollment deposit is paid, then we start working with students to help them look at housing on our off-campus housing options, ask them to start looking at their flights to get them to campus. If they do need a visa, we would start that process right away. So then, once they're accepted, the sooner they're accepted, the earlier we can start working on all these different pieces to make sure that they're getting to campus on time so that they are fresh and ready and prepared to start medical school.
Great. And for Ross is also $1,000 US for the deposit as well?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So let's see if we've all been paying attention. Let's recap this, folks. I have with me Jennifer Stovall representing the American University of the Caribbean School of Medicine out in St. Martin on the Dutch side. And then I have Colin, also Ross University School of Medicine. How can I forget? That's home territory right here in Barbados where I am based. And just to break down the difference between those two. So for those, if you have a degree already, so if you have your Bachelor of Science, and you have taken all the prerequisite science courses that's required for entry into medical school, into the US. If you are a non-US citizen, no MCAT required, but there are some other admission requirements that you can look at. You can definitely look at that program at AUC and Ross. So having a degree is important. American University of the Caribbean offers a track for persons with an MBBS already. So that is also a unique feature to AUC. So for those of you doctors, those of you with your MBBS, there is an option for you if you want to become a physician and access a residency in the US via AUC. And then we have my friend Colin Dell representing St. George's University out in Grenada, offering quite a number of pathways from persons in secondary school all the way up to university. There's a 7-year, 6-year, 5-year, and then there's the 4-year program. Colin, correct me if I'm wrong, no MCAT for non-US citizens, right? For the 4-year?
That's correct. No MCAT for non-US citizens or permanent residents. That's correct.
All right, great. So there are some nice little exemptions. And we know every year we have persons asking, well, I want to become a physician, but not home. I want to go to the US or I want to be a physician in the UK. These schools right here in the Caribbean do offer you that. And there are some incentives in terms of awards for international students coming from the Caribbean. With AUC and Ross, they're automatic once you are accepted. For SGU in Grenada, there is for the preclinical years a discount for CARICOM nationals, reducing those preclinical years for you significantly. And there's also the ability to qualify for further scholarship for your clinical years. Did it get all of that kind of summed up nicely?
You did a great job.
There is access, and that is important. Is that don't get fearful when you go onto any of our websites and you see a price. Don't worry. Talk to us. There is an opportunity for it to be reduced.
Well, if they become a plastic surgeon, at least within a couple of years, they can knock off those loans one time. So, if with all the BBLs going around, yeah, they can knock off that tuition within a couple of years. The ROI is high depending on the specialty or the heart specialist. So medicine might cost a lot, but the ROI is huge once you decide on your specialty. And so you got to really think about it. So remember, options for secondary school students, those with post-secondary education and those with an MBBS already. You don't need to leave the Caribbean. You can actually start your process right here, either in Grenada, in Barbados, where I am, or in St. Martin. And funny enough, I've been to all three of these lovely countries and one I live in and call home. So it's good to say study Caribbean and become a US or UK trained doctor via AUC Ross or SGU. I want to thank you guys this evening for your time. I know, Jennifer, you're a little bit with like jet lag. So so I'm going to release you. And Colin, I know you've been up and down all over the world just promoting studying in the Caribbean right here. So I want to say thanks for those who are in the Zoom. And remember, you can apply to any of these schools via the CutFest website. We have our Apply Medicine platform, bringing you more options across the globe, including right here at home in the Caribbean. To learn more, just visit www.cutfestinternational.com. And hopefully you will see us on the road when our next CutFest education in-person fairs for the fall schedule come in, making stops in Barbados, St. Lucia, Jamaica, and maybe Antigua. We're not sure about that yet, but we will make that decision soon. So coming again all through the region as we do it year round. So good evening to everyone. Thank you again.